always important to make sure that you terminate this at the electrical box, not down there.
What's up, everybody? Chlorine King here. Thanks for tuning in for another video. In this video, I have a Gulfstream heat pump right behind me, and I'm going to show you how to wire it. Not only the high voltage, because that part in and of itself is not difficult, but also the low voltage. This is a heat-cool unit, and this property has automation, so I'm going to show you how to run the low voltage for the heat and the cool to get it be fully controlled by the automation. So stay tuned and let's go ahead and dive in.
All right, so first things first, you got 3 screws you need to open up to get to the electrical panel. So inside the heater, all you need is a flathead, just a little quarter turn like that. You got one there, you got one down there, and then on the other side, you got one right there. So let's go ahead and undo those 3. And again, just a quarter turn, and then you can pull this entire front panel off. So you can see we got the front panel off the heat pump now. All that we need to do to open up this electrical compartment is undo this one screw here, which we'll do shortly. But I want to point out something super important. Notice how this conduit in liquid tight is terminated here at the electrical box. This is the proper way to do it. You don't want, I've seen this time and time again, installers will terminate the conduit right here with a liquid tight or whatever, and then they have literally 50 or 60 amps, 240 volts all running up here, just expose the elements, waiting to have something bad happen. So it's always important to make sure that you terminate this at the electrical box, not down there. Alrighty, so now you guys can see I am inside of the electrical compartment of the Gulfstream heat pump. But before we get started and show you where all the wires go, let's talk about code for a second. So the NEC states that if you're wiring a timer box, an automation system, a sub panel, a heat pump just like this, there needs to be 36 inches of unimpeded space from the working face of that box outward. So in other words, 36 inches from this, where my hands is, out towards the camera. So from here, I measured directly across to this sub panel, and it's exactly 37 inches. So I met that code here. It's very important to follow that. I couldn't put the electrical over there because the plumbing impedes that 36 inches of workspace. Not to mention here, I probably couldn't get the thing installed and get the door open, much less this bush here impedes that 36 inches of workspace. Over here, that column, that bush, and what you guys can't see, pool equipment's over there. I couldn't put it over there because that impedes that 36 inches. So in other words, just make sure if you guys are installing these things, you're given enough space. So with that said, let's get into the electrical. Let's talk about the high voltage first. Effectively, this is the same with virtually any heat pump. You feed the power in into the contactor and that's it. So this could be coming in from a disconnect, an automation system, a sub panel, whatever it may be, it gets fed to the disconnect. And we have a 50 amp breaker, so these are number 8s. You can see I left ample room here for the next person after me to, if they need to cut and make a new connection, there's plenty of wire there instead of having to rerun all the wiring. You see there's a little copper exposed. I do that simply just to make sure that there's no insulation underneath that lug to give a bad connection or inconsistent power, so on and so forth. When you first get the heater and open it up, these lugs are probably gonna have a piece of tape over it. Just go ahead and pull that off and make your connection. Then from here we have a number 10 running to that ground lug there. As it's labeled, so it's important to do that. You want the system grounded. And then this is the bonding lug. So this is not enclosed in the electrical box when it is closed. You can see the bolt for the doors here, so it's sort of off to the side, and it's just ran down through the same hole the conduit's in. One nice thing Gulfstream does, they leave an ample size hole here in the cabinet for you to run. This is 3/4 inch conduit to run the conduit, the bonding wire, and in this case 2 communication wires. So next thing we're talking about is the comm wires. Why do we have 2? Well, because this is a cool unit. If it's a heat only unit, we'd only use 1 comm wire. So now that we know it's a heat cool unit and we need 2 wires, where do they go? Well, I feed them up through this grommet here, and then if you see right there, you see those 4 blue connectors stacked on top of each other. The top 2 are reserved for the heat only portion. So if this was a heat only pump, we'd only use these 2 connections to go to automation. This is the pool spa T-stat. Now, because we have heat cool, these bottom 2 are what gives the heat or I'm sorry, the heater, the cooling function. It's the heat cool connection. So that's how you wire the low voltage at the heat pump side. And we'll show you how to do it on the automation side here in a minute. So now that we got that all accomplished, we'll go ahead and close this all up. So we're gonna close this door, secure it with that bolt over there. And then we're going to reattach the front of the cabinet with those 3 quarter turn flatheads like I showed you in the beginning. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you how it's wired on the automation side. All right, so you can see now that we have the Gulfstream heat pump all buttoned up and safe. So now let's go over to the automation system. So the automation system here at this property is a Janny iAqualink 904 PS. So if you remember those top 2 contacts in the heat pump for the pool spa T-stat, where does that go? Well, that goes on any automation system to the low voltage heater port, which on this automation system is on this green 10-pin bar on spots 1 and 2. If it was a heat only heat pump, you'd be done. But because we have a heat cool, remember those bottom 2 is for the heat cool function, where does that comm wire go? Well, per Gulfstream, that needs to be gone to an available relay. So you can see here we got a relay open, and you can see we got it wired to, when we toggle auxiliary 3 to chiller, it opens and closes the circuit, because you got, again, the far left one would be like line 1, and then the one next to it would be load 1. So it's effectively closing the circuit. Never, ever, ever mix high voltage and low voltage together on that relay. You will absolutely destroy, at best, just the fuse on the board, or at worst, destroy the board completely. I know it's been beating our heads to never mix high and low voltage together in the same area, but this is no different than when Pentair back in the day, when their superflows were starting to be able to work with the Easy Touch. They had a communication wire with like 8 different wires, and in order to get the superflow to do different speeds, you'd have to wire those to specific open relays in the high voltage area. So 0 difference there. It's just you don't ever want to put a high voltage line there, because you will absolutely destroy whatever low voltage component is tied to that relay. So, and you can also see I didn't just run it through the high voltage. I actually ran it through the low voltage raceway over. If you look closely, you can see I ran it through the auxiliary hole there, and then just connected it right there to try to stay out of the way of the high voltage stuff as much as possible. So now that we got it all wired up on the automation side, we're not quite done yet. So let me go ahead and show you what settings we needed to do and put on the heat pump itself to make it talk to this automation system. So let's get on to that. All right, so we got this thing wired up. It should just work, right? Not so fast. We got to make some changes here on the unit itself to recognize the automation system and allow it to be controlled by the automation system. First thing we got to do is get in the menu. So you hold these up and down arrows. You want remote TSAT enabled, so you just make the adjustment with the up or down arrow, and then click mode to go to the next one. We want remote heat cool also enabled. We want pool heat cool disabled. We want pool cool enabled. And that's it. Those are the 3 main ones you got to make sure that are set properly to have the automation control the heat pump. Now, remote T-stat you have regardless if it's heat or heat cool. Obviously, you would have this disabled if it was heat only. Keep that disabled, and obviously you'd have cool disabled as well if it's a heat only. So those are the only differences between if it's a heat only unit versus heat cool. So once that's all done, you go ahead, and I like to just go back to where I was, the remote T-stat, make sure that's enabled. Hold these again for 5 seconds. And there we go. So now the heat pump is set up, and you can see the blinking square there. That indicates that it is connected to automation and ready and waiting for command. So that is what you change on the panel to get the automation to control this heat pump. All right, so that's essentially it. The one thing I forgot to tell you while we're going through the settings of the heat pump, before you put it in a remote T-stat, you want to adjust the temperatures on the unit to max them out. You want the pool and spa heat to be as high as possible, or as high as you want them to be. And then with the chilling temperature, as long as it's set, I believe, within 5 degrees of the heat set points, it'll allow the heat pump to chill the pool. So you want to do that before you put in a remote T-stat, so that way you give the automation system the maximum range of temperature. So again, to recap, we showed you the electrical clearances required by code.
We talked about high voltage wiring. We talked about low voltage wiring, regardless if it is a heat only or a heat cool to an automation system. And then lastly, we showed you the settings on the unit itself to adjust to get the automation to control the heat pump. So I really hope this video helped you guys out. Stay tuned for more videos. Thank you so much to my Patreon subscribers. If you're interested, there's a link below. And stay tuned for the next one. Have a great day.